Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our way too early 2025 IDP Dynasty Rookie Rankings.
Hike!
This is an exciting episode. We did this last year. We like to look at the draft class, kind of give our analysis of what we think way too early. And this is important. This could change drastically over time. This is before the combine, before pro days, before these guys even get drafted. But Joe, this is an exciting defensive class, way, way better than last year. We didn't see someone get taken. I think it was still the 14th pick with the Atalatu. Not going to be the case here. There's going to be some guys taken in the top 10 here. So, Joe, who do you have at the 101?
At the 101, I'm going to go with Travis Hunter as a corner. And I think, even though he's a corner, you typically don't see, DBs this high. But this guy, as we mentioned in our offensive video, is just different. I mean, like you compared him to Shohei Ohtani of baseball. And this is like with the standpoint that the NFL team that he goes to is going to let him also play wide receiver. And that's going to allow him to kind of be the cheat code. And that's why I have him at the 101. But not only is he a, great wide receiver, but he's also a fluid player at the cornerback position with great ball skills, obviously. And then he's also got great route recognition when he's defending other wide receivers. And just all goes back to that background of him playing wide receiver as well.
No surprise here. I've got him at the 101 as well. I think he'll be the ultimate cheat code if you have him. If for our league, you have to start 2 cornerbacks. You could start even 3 if you wanted to. So having a guy like him, getting the consistency of wide receiver stats, because corners can be so volatile, you're getting that on top of that. I mean, you're talking about he might be the most valuable. If he does play both sides of the ball.
That's the caveat.
He might be the most valuable defensive player out there.
Right. And that's kind of the thought. That's why, we both have him at the 101 here.
Oh, for sure. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So who do you got at the 102?
All right. At the 102, I've got defensive end Abdul Carter of Penn State. He's 6'3", 259 pounds. Led the Big Ten with 22 tackle for loss and had 11 sacks. And, when taking a look at his tape, the first thing you notice is just his speed and that, first step quickness off the ball. And then he's got a relentless motor. And this guy, as some of these other defensive ends in this draft class is interesting. He's not just a pass rusher, has the ability to drop into coverage as well as he played some inside linebacker as well. And then also like edge rushers that can set edges and play the run as well, and Abdul Carter can do that.
Yeah, I also have Abdul Carter at the 102 as well. Joe, one of the things I look for an edge rusher is, do they have that bend? Von Miller had it, and he was a great player. You could see that with Abdul Carter. He's got that. He's got the speed to get around the edge. He's also got the versatility. I don't know if you watch the tape. Not only is he lining up on the outside, sometimes he shot the gap. And those guards didn't know what to do. They couldn't handle him in the centers. So to me, he's got that versatility to play across the line. He's got great pass rush skills, and his physical traits are just off the charts. I expect him to do really well at the combine. I just think his athleticism is just going to be, I think we're going to talk about the other guys, but I think he's clearly the number one guy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some interesting other edge rushers, but I agree. He is the number one guy.
I mean, would you say I would almost say that he's better than Kayvon. I don't know if he's better than Aiden Hutchinson as a prospect. Would you say? I'm just trying to think of some of the top edge rushers that have come out over the past few years. I would say he's up there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen people, comparing him to obviously, Micah Parsons, who also was at Penn State, and he also was able to play, inside linebacker as well, and just had a lot of versatility to him. So, I mean, and the speed is there as well. So, I mean, I do think that's an interesting comparison.
I don't know what it is with these Penn State edge rushers, though. Whether it's Away or Chop Robinson, these guys would rely on their speed. And so he'll be an interesting prospect. Who do you got at the 103, Joe?
All right, at the 103. Interesting how you want to classify this guy. But I'm going with Jalen Walker of Georgia. Some places list him as an inside linebacker. I think he's better fitted for the outside linebacker position. But he's 6'2", 245 pounds. And, he had 60 tackles and 6.5 sacks in 2024. And he's another guy, Steve, this is important to me, but plays with a high motor. And he also has, high football IQ, and it shows with his, when you watch him, just the way he's able to pick up plays and recognize them and just be in a good position to make plays.
So for me, for the 103, surprise, I'm going with this guy before you, but I'm going with your team, Joe. Defensive tackle Mason Graham for the University of Michigan. He's 6'3", 320, had 46 total tackles, 3.5 sacks. To me, he's the prototypical defensive tackle at 6'3", 320. He's got great athleticism. He's got a quick, excellent quick first step. He's got that lateral agility. He's able to penetrate the gaps. He's good in the run, but he has the pass rush upside, and that's what you need with defensive tackles, that they're going to cash in for you. So he's going to be a top 10 pick probably in the NFL. I don't know about you. Some are a little bit concerned about his arm length. They think that he may be a little shorter than ideal. I know you don't really care about that stuff, but that'll be interesting to see. I don't think he'll slide at all, but I think he's an intriguing prospect at the defensive tackle position.
Yeah, no doubt. He is a very intriguing prospect at defensive tackle. Yeah, I do have him in my top 12 list. Just you have him higher than me. But yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, yeah, I did see, his arm length is a concern, but you know how I feel about that stuff.
Yeah, you don't care. Who do you got for the 104?
All right, at the 104, I'm going to go with defensive end James Pierce Jr. of Tennessee, 6'5", 243 pounds. Watching this guy's highlight, he really flashes. He's got a lot of speed and athleticism. He's recorded over 110 quarterback pressures during his collegiate career, but he will need to add some weight to his frame so he can add some more power to his attack and be stronger in the run game. But I think, kind of like I always say with Chop Robinson, the one thing you just can't teach is that speed and athleticism to get to the quarterback, and he'll be able to, in time, develop those other things.
I also have James Pierce Jr. at the 104. Obviously, the speed, he definitely utilizes it. It's very much on display, like you said, Joe. You can't teach that. I do think that he may need to do better in the run game. That's where, possibly, like you said, if he puts on some weight, I think that could help him, just having a better frame. And at the end of the day, I think he relies a lot on the speed. And so his technique, as far as his pass rush moves, I think could develop in the future. But I think just from an overall potential standpoint, I'm with you. I'm going with James Pierce as well. So who do you got for the 105?
All right, at the 5, I've got linebacker Jahad Campbell of Alabama, 6'3", 244 pounds, had 117 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks in 2024. Really excels at playing downhill and making the plays in the backfield. He also has versatility, as an edge player, which also makes him an effective blitzer from the linebacker position. But then he's also got the sideline to sideline range that you'd like to see to, assist in the screens and dump off passes. And I've seen a lot of comparisons to like an Edgerrin Cooper from last year's draft class with him.
Interesting. For the 105, I'm going to go, this might be a little high. Might drop him down a little bit, down the road here. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I'm going with safety Malachi Starks out of Georgia, 6'1", 205. Joe, we talked about Tyler Nubin last year, a guy I was really excited about. This guy, it seems like he could be in a similar vein. He's got great ball skills, very athletic. I think he'll be able to be a ball hawk at the next level. Very athletic. He can play multiple roles in the secondary. They could use him as a Swiss Army knife, honestly, from deep safety to nickelback. I think it probably, won't be nickelback, but he's just got, great physicality. He's not afraid to tackle. So I think for me, he's a guy I'm pretty excited about. Safety is a tough one. A lot of times people won't want to invest in a safety this high, but I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, there's a couple of safeties in this draft class, man. Watching their highlights, they're exciting players. You mentioned Starks. The highlight reels where he's just going up and making those big acrobatic catches is really impressive.
All right, Joe, who do you got for the 106?
All right, at the 106, got linebacker Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, 6'4", 236 pounds. He had 376 tackles, 37 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and 3 interceptions over his 4-year career. He's athletic enough to play sideline to sideline, but also holds up in coverage as well. But just watching his tape, I really like his aggressiveness when he's able to, play downhill in the run game and during his blitzes. And another thing, he's just a tackling machine as he rarely misses tackles.
So for me at the 106, this guy is probably one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft at this point. Really excited about him as a player. I think the upside is immense, but he could be a huge bust. And that's defensive tackle. I've seen some say defensive end. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, 6'6", 290. Joe, when you watch this guy, he is so explosive. I think that a defensive coordinator or a defensive head coach, they see this guy and they're like, what can we do with him? Because his athleticism is off the charts. He can play edge. He can play in the interior. He just looks like he's going to wreak havoc at the NFL. He's got a high ceiling. The big thing is his production. He really didn't do all that much. Only had 1.5 sacks and 31 tackles. Hadn't had a lot of sacks in his career. So his consistency hasn't been great. So he's a project. But if somebody can just take the tools that this guy has and make it into a masterpiece, I'll tell you what, this guy's going to be a good player.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also interesting you got a guy that's kind of a project this high, but the potential definitely is there. But the lack of production and stuff made me nervous.
Interesting. All right, what do you got for the 107?
All right, at the 107, I've got defensive end Princely Uman Milan of Ole Miss. Probably butchered that, but he's 6'4", 255 pounds. He's got a quick get off, nice bend to turn the corner as well while rushing the passer. He also has multiple pass rush moves, including a spin move, and he's got a relentless motor and shows good play recognition skills. Another guy that needs to continue to develop a power move that should also help him on the run game. But I've seen some comparing him to the likes of Brian Burns type player.
Interesting. So at the 107, Joe, if you didn't like my last pick, you'll like this pick as far as production goes. That's defensive end Mike Green from Marshall, 6'4", 248. Guy has had a phenomenal year last year. 81 total tackles, 17 sacks. He led the FBS last year. Also had 22.5 tackles for loss. Just had a complete breakout year. I mean, he just is so twitchy. I mean, he has a ton of pass rush moves. He has a repertoire of pass rush moves. There is a lot. I mean, he's not just speed. He's got speed, but he's got a bunch of other stuff. Honestly, I'm not concerned at all that he's in Marshall. I almost wanted to put this guy higher because I couldn't believe the amount of pass rush moves this guy's had. He's spinning. He's swimming. He's doing all this other stuff. So I was really impressed by Mike Green. He's got a high motor, which I know you like. I'm surprised you haven't talked about this guy. I think he could be a real star at the next level.
Yeah. Well, I will be talking about him, Steve. You just happen to have him higher than me.
All right. What do you got at the 108?
All right. At 108, I've got safety Nick Emenwore of South Carolina. The other safety outside of Malachi Starks that I was alluding to, Steve, he's 6'3", 227. He's a long-rangey safety with impressive ball skills as well. And when he gets his hands on the ball, one thing I noticed during his highlights is, man, he's just immediately looking to take it to the crib, which he's done several times. And he's another guy, he's got very good coverage skills. But one thing I like as well is he's a very physical tackler, at the point of attack.
So now that I know you're a newly father, is that what they call it now, the crib? Because I thought it's usually they go to the house when they. I've never heard of someone say go into the crib.
Either or, both analogies work there.
Oh boy. Well, at the 108, I'm going with a different Gamecock, and that's going to be linebacker Demetrius Knight, 6'2", 245. In his earliest career, he mostly was playing on special teams. But if you watch this guy, man, it looks like he gets shot out of a cannon. He played at 3 different programs at Georgia Tech, Charlotte, and South Carolina. But he really, I thought, played very, very well from what I could tell. He's got great physical attributes. He's got great size. He is able to cover ground quickly. So, to me, from what I saw on the tape, He's a guy who he has the ability to stop the run. I think he can also cover as well. He does have some limitations there, but I really like this guy.
Yeah, it makes sense. He was a guy I considered. I don't have him in my top 12 for the Dynasty rankings, but I just happen to like Stutzman more in terms of how linebackers go.
All right, who do you got for the 109?
All right. At the 109, we've got safety Malachi Starks of Georgia, 6'1", 205. Talked about the fact that he's got insane ball skills and high-flying interceptions, which he had 6 interceptions along with 77 tackles in his junior year. And being able to secure those interceptions and really make those big plays on the ball is exactly what you're looking for in terms of IDP safeties and what's going to elevate guys to the next level. I mean, a lot of safeties can get the tackles, but especially in a league like ours with the big play scoring, you want the interceptions and passes defenses, and that's what this guy brings.
So you talked about this guy recently, Joe. I'm going with what my 109 is Nick Emanawari, the safety from South Carolina. A lot of things that you said, and I watched him. Like you're right, a lot of them were going right to the house, to the crib, like you'd say. But he's got great football IQ. Again, a guy who has great versatility. He's 6'3", 227. I mean, that's huge for a safety. He's got great ball skills as well. It would be interesting to see which guy gets drafted first. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Emanawari is drafted ahead of Malachi Starks.
Yeah, it was tough, man. Like I really like Starks, but then watching Emanawari's tape, I kind of liked what he brought to the table better, just like that physicality he plays with and everything. So I mean, I got them. They're interchangeable, really. These are two really good safeties and should be both productive IDP players.
All right, who do you got for the 110?
All right, at 110, I've got defensive tackle Mason Graham from Michigan, as you mentioned, Steve. 6'3", 320. One of the reasons I'm not worried about the arm length with him is he has a wrestling background, and that seems to help him. He's a guy that knows how to play with leverage, plays with a lot of power to get off blocks. He's a guy that is able to split double teams to make plays in the backfield in the run game. And then you mentioned he's got that sack upside, which you really want to see in terms of an IDP perspective. And even if he's one thing I want to see him develop more is just more of those pass rush moves instead of just relying on that power. And if he really does that, he'll really increase that sack potential.
Why not have him higher? I guess I'm a little surprised how low you have him.
I struggled with the defensive tackle being higher. It's just more so where he plays, even though I do think he's got potential to be a dominant player and a good player. I just think like some of these linebackers and edge rushers, with higher sack potentials probably are more desirable for IDP.
So for 110, I've got defensive tackle Derek Harmon from Oregon, 6'5", 310. I have 45 tackles, 5 sacks. He's got a great frame, at 6'5", 310. He's got versatility. He can play 1 tech to the 5 tech. He's great in run defense, but he's also a disruptor, got a lot of power. Could develop some pass rush moves. Oregon has had a good history of defensive tackles back in the day. Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner. Obviously, it's been a long time since then. I think this guy could follow in their footsteps. I think he has a lot of potential on the next level.
Yeah, it makes sense. You really like these interior defensive linemen, I see.
What can I say, Joe?
Just interesting that prioritizing them over like some other linebackers and edge rushers.
Mm-hmm. Well, who do you got at the 111?
All right, at the 111, guy that you've mentioned, Steve, I'm going to go with defensive end Mike Green out of Marshall. You mentioned his size, 6'4", 248 pounds. He's a really raw player, but has a ton of potential. You mentioned his production, even though it is at Marshall. Like another thing you mentioned too, just the one thing he's truly missing, he's got all the pass rush moves and everything like that, is just being, if he can bulk up and better set the edge and play the run game better.
So at the 111 now that we're at here, I'm going to go with Jalen Walker, defensive end out of Georgia, 6'2", 245. You talked about him earlier, Joe. You had him a lot higher than me. I think my biggest question is I think he's a tweener at the next level. I don't know what he's going to play. Is he going to play edge? Is he going to play linebacker? I think that would ultimately change my thought as to what to do with him. We saw Nolan Smith, who also came from Georgia, kind of a smaller frame, He's been able to now excel. You've seen guys like Hassan Reddick do it. So it's not to say he can't, but then you also see guys, coming to the next level at linebacker. The linebacker that went to the Green Bay Packers out of Texas A&M.
Cooper?
That's it. Thank you.
I was going to say I mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, I know, but I can't remember. Oh, my bad. So Adrian Cooper, though, he played outside and inside too, ended up staying inside, and he did really, really well. So he's a guy who could have I think it's just too early. I just don't know what to think about the guy, and I'm concerned how much of a tweener he is because it's really a kind of a toss-up as to what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I really like his talent, but depending on if we get more clarification on what he potentially is going to play or how NFL teams see him, I might have to adjust my rankings as well. But I kind of think I prefer to see him as, playing off the edge and then maybe in a 3-4 system that also is able to kind of drop back in coverage at times. Maybe he gets his hands on a ball.
You're not wrong, though. He definitely has the athleticism and the motor. So I think he can be a good player. I don't want people to think that by me having him this low is because I don't think he'll be a good player. I think he can be. It's just I'm worried about how someone's going to use him.
No, I think it's fair. I mean, we have seen, tweeners just not work, or these guys that are just like not fit for one position. And then it really depends on, the defensive scheme that they go to and a coordinator to put them in the best positions. I mean, seeing like a guy like Isaiah Simmons, everyone's like, oh, this guy's a Swiss Army knife, can play all over the field. Well, he hasn't been a very productive NFL player, and he hasn't been productive for IDP despite all the hype around him.
That's a scary thing with positionless player. It's like the player, they say, hey, they can play anywhere, but then where do they lock in, and can they actually succeed at that? That's the tough part.
Yeah.
All right, so let's round it out. Joe, who do you got at the 112?
All right, at the 112, I'm going to go with defensive end Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, 6'5", 260 pounds. Another guy, Steve, plays with a high motor, relentless effort. That I like to see that. And, he's unlike some of these other guys that play defensive end, he's a disciplined edge player when it comes to the run game, which allows him, that's one of his strengths, is being able to play the run game. And I like that because that'll allow him to kind of have a nice tackle floor for you at the edge rusher position and not being one of those guys solely relying on the sack totals.
So to round it up for me at 112, I've got Mike Kyle Williams, defensive end out of Georgia, 6'5", 265. He's got that prototypical, size. That's a great size at 6'5", 265. And he's, when I watch the tape, he's very good at the run defense. So it was hard. I was wondering whether or not to include him or not because, he did have 5 sacks last year, but you could tell how good he was at the run. The question is, can a team develop him to become this pass rusher as well? That's my only question with him. Because he's going to have tackles, he could have a higher floor, but he needs that upside. But he's shown flashes as far as his pass rush ability, and I think just by some pure potential, this guy could rise almost. I can't remember honestly off the top of my head. I think maybe Tyree Wilson had more sack numbers than when he out of Texas Tech than what Michael Williams is showing. But this is not the last time that a team won't draft a guy like him in the top 12, top 15, and thinking that they could get the most out of him.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being top 15, top 20 pick. But I think my concern was just his production numbers the last couple of years in college kind of dropping off. You mentioned the sack numbers decreasing as well. So I think being that he plays the run well, I think if he were to go like on a 3-4, he'd be an interior defensive end or like a defensive end in a 4-3 as well.
So that does it for this episode. As you can see, it is not cut and dry who are the top 12 guys. Joe and I were completely, we were vastly different across the board here, and that's what makes it fun. This is not a cut and dry defensive class. There's a lot of intriguing prospects, much better class than last year. So we're definitely going to be monitoring as I'm sure any of you, as you're tuning in, you're going to be monitoring the pro days, the combine, and the draft. All this is going to shake up. That's why this is way too early. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time.